I call on you, would you please state your name and how you're related to the case or to the children in the case, the child rather. I know Mr. Reyna is observing on behalf of the DA's office. Ms. Davis is observing on behalf of CASA. Karen Cortez is our court coordinator, and Tammy Wolf is our court reporter. Ms. Wilhelm, will you introduce yourself, please, ma'am?
Amanda Wilhelm, attorney for the department.
Mr. Hardy.
John Hardy, attorney for respondent mother not ready.
Ms. Smith.
Anne Marie Smith for the child. I'm ready.
Mr. LaCroix. I can see you, but we're going to stop your video because that should help some with the audio. Okay, now Mr. LaCroix, would you try it again, please?
Okay. Andrew LaCroix, father of the child.
Thank you. That worked just fine. Ms. LaCroix.
Hi, Christy LaCroix, grandmother of Aries.
Ms. Griffin.
Stephanie Griffin, mother of Aries.
Ms. Hawkins.
Robbie Hawkins, CASA for Aries.
And Ms. Noyes.
Kayla Noyes, CPS caseworker.
Thank you. And Mr. Hardy, what is your not ready announcement based on?
Your Honor, my client is currently back in rehab. She's at Synacor. She's been at Synacor since Saturday. So I would re-urge the court to reconsider resetting mom to the same timeline as Mr. LaCroix. You may recall that the trajectory that this case has been on started when Miss Griffin was not in rehab when she was supposed to be. She is in rehab now. Also, the removal was on March 6th. That was less than 9 months ago. So it's too early for the court to even hold her to the service plan. So I just re-urge the court to give Miss Griffin more time to complete rehab, and we can come back after that.
What has your client been doing since, let's see, when we were last here, August the 31st?
Your Honor, she was in Starlight recovery at that time. My understanding is that she was assaulted when she was there. She had to leave. She had a stay in Austin Oaks. She was at a facility in Dallas. And she just recently got into Synacor in Austin.
Okay, Ms. Griffin, the facility that you were at that Mr. Hardy referred to back in August, where you were assaulted, what facility was that again?
Starlight Recovery.
And how long were you there?
I had 8 days left of 30.
So you had been there 22 days?
Yes.
Left after 8?
Yes.
And then you went from there to where?
To Austin Oaks Hospital.
And was that for any rehab or for mental health issues?
Mental health issues, just because I was like having a hard time dealing with assault.
Okay, and how long were you at Austin Oaks?
For 10 days, and then I went to another, since it's only a 10-day stay there, I went to Dallas and did another 10 days there at the Haven.
The Haven in Dallas, and was that for mental health or for drug?
Mental health.
So there was another 10 days there.
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell me when it was that you left Starlight, what day and what month?
I couldn't, I don't remember that.
Okay. Did you leave immediately after you were assaulted?
I waited like maybe a week.
Okay. Well then, when were you assaulted?
It was probably maybe September 6th or something.
Maybe or probably. I mean,
yeah. I think it's September 6th. I'm sorry, I should have had it written down.
Yeah, September 6th. Okay. And we came to court on August the 31st. You were at Starlight at the time?
Yes.
Okay. And then when you left the Haven, where did you go?
I went to the Houston and Right Step.
The Right Step in Houston?
Yes.
And how long were you there?
For 19 days, but my insurance cut off and it expired, and they were trying to work with me and send me somewhere I really did not want to go, so I denied going to this place called Magnificod, and I just came back to Austin and waited for a bed to open up here in Singapore.
And I may be able to help clarify dates with Starlight, Your Honor.
Would you
Yes,
please?
Your Honor. So I had a meeting set with Miss Griffin to be September 21st at Starlight facility, and I received an email September 17th from the counselor that she was unable to confirm or deny if Miss Griffin was there any longer, indicating that she had left September 16th.
Did Miss let you know where she went after Starlight?
No, I found out from her attorney almost 2 weeks later.
And when was the let's see how many days have been since August the 31st. So we've had 3 months go by since then. And if I'm counting correctly, she's got 45 to 50 days that she was in some sort of rehab or facility, mental health facility during that time.
That's what's alleged, Your Honor. However, the department has not been able to confirm any of that since she left Starlight until she got to Houston, and then I was notified that she left against the medical treatment advice of the facility in Houston.
Okay, Mr. Hardy,
Your
do you
Honor,
have
that would be hearsay.
Do you have any more evidence?
I think maybe one thing that would help clear this up regarding Miss Griffin's sobriety would be if we referred her to a hair follicle test, and then we could see what the results were, and we could see whether she's been sober for the past 90 days.
Okay,
since the last hearing.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
When was
So Miss Griffin has not completed a hair follicle test for the department. When I asked her for the past 2 weeks when she left Houston, where she was living, what her plan was, there were several days that had gone in between contact. She never told me where she was residing. She did ask me to send her for a hair test while she was in the facility in Houston. However, once the department begins trial for a case, and this trial did begin August 31st, we no longer send clients in for the drug testing or continue sending in referrals for new services. Trial has begun for this case, and that's the department's position.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Hardy?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to overrule your not ready announcement, and we're going to proceed. Ms. Griffin, part of the problem is that the last hearing, I heard a number of times that you had told me or told the department that you were in a rehab, but you weren't. So trust is a very important thing. And when you raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth and you don't tell the truth, it becomes difficult for me to believe what you do tell me. So we're going to continue. I will tell you where we were last. We had Ms. Noyes was the first witness. And it looks like she was the only witness on August 31st.
Yes, Judge, I think when we left off, I had just passed having finished direct examination of Ms. Noyes, but I don't believe anyone had cross-examined her.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hardy?
Yes. Ms. Noyes, the removal took place on March 6th, is that correct?
That's correct.
So Aries has been in the temporary managing conservatorship of the department for less than 9 months.
I'm sorry, I haven't done that math. I don't know off the top of my head.
So now it's November 28th. And so early March would have been,
So if I'm counting
it would have
correct,
been, yeah, it would have been about 7 months ago.
from
It's been a while.
7
to August or to now?
to now. Would have been about 7.5.
March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. I'm counting 9 months.
From March. So 9 plus 3
March.
is 12.
Correct. But March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November.
Okay. So 9 months would have been
9 months would be
November. But it would have been December 6th.
I can do basic math.
Okay. Yes.
Let me just make notes of the date, and I can do that.
Thank
Okay.
you, Judge.
And so at the time of the removal, Aries had mostly been, to your knowledge, had mostly been living with Mr. LaCroix.
To my knowledge, Aries had been living with Mr. LaCroix since September 21st or September 2021.
Okay. So to your knowledge, to your knowledge, Aries would not have been exposed to any drugs in Miss Griffin's home?
Objection to speculation. She wasn't there. She doesn't know what was going on in the home.
Based on
Hang on, let me
what
make a ruling on the objection real quick, okay? I'm going to ask that Mr. Hardy rephrase his question, okay?
Okay. So based on what you've been told by Mr. LaCroix and Miss Griffin, Aries would not have been directly exposed to any of the drugs, if there were any, in Miss Griffin's home.
In regards to Aries being exposed, I would base my information on the investigation and the information that was obtained in the investigation. And I would disagree with that statement that he would have been exposed by Miss Griffin. He would have been exposed by Miss Griffin, based off of my information I have.
Did you do a drug test on Aries?
I don't know. A drug test was not requested. So the investigation for this case began in December of 2022.
Okay.
And TMC was not obtained until March of 2023. So there was no drug test in that time frame.
Okay. On the direct examination, you mentioned that there were concerns for domestic violence by Miss Griffin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Was that domestic violence was not between Miss Griffin and Mr. LaCroix, was it?
Not that I recall, no. My one-on-one meeting with Miss Griffin, the first time I met with her, she disclosed that she had engaged in domestic violence in another relationship.
Okay. Was this before her relationship with Mr. LaCroix?
I don't recall if she told me what the time frame was for that.
Okay. So you recall that there was previously a case involving another child between Miss Griffin and Mr. LaCroix.
And sorry, don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Hardy. Just because you're going into the other case, I do just want to point out that Miss Harding, who's the attorney for Andrew, is not here.
Okay. Can you answer my question?
I'm aware of the case.
Okay. And so, and Miss Griffin's rights were not terminated in that case, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if it was in another relationship, it would have been before that case, any domestic violence?
I don't know. I wasn't the caseworker. I don't know what those conversations were had. I don't know what if that worker would have considered it a problem and put it on the service plan. I wasn't the worker at the time. I don't know.
Okay. Did you send Miss Griffin to any services regarding domestic violence?
I did. I sent in a referral for BIP.
Okay.
Life Works in Austin.
Miss Griffin has not been given any visits with Aries for some time, has she?
That was court ordered based on Miss Griffin's lack of engagement and lack of drug testing. That was ordered, I believe, back in March, the end of March, beginning of April.
Okay. No further questions.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, Judge. Ms. Noyes, can you tell the court why is your opinion that Ms. Griffin is not a safe and fit parent for Aries?
Ms. Griffin has an extensive history of substance abuse. The lack of acknowledgement and the lack of concern for her substance abuse. We have been offering her OSARs and trying to help her get into inpatient since the beginning of this case. Not to mention, this is, as Mr. Hardy pointed out, their second case. Their second case related to drug use and substance abuse. In the last case, from my understanding, it was a short-term sobriety that had been shown. And here we are 2 years later and we're having the same concern. So we have some pretty extensive drug use that's not being addressed in a serious manner. So it's the safety of Aries being around methamphetamines, prescription or no prescription. There are some concerns regarding methamphetamine and the just overall lack of engagement and wanting to alleviate the substance abuse. That's having a 3, almost 4-year-old around that is not safe for anybody. And not only is that a safety concern for Aries, but that's also a safety concern for Miss Griffin and making sure that she's taking care of herself.
Thank you. And have you had a chance to see Miss Griffin's home leading up to trial?
The last I was told is she had been evicted. So as far as
And I'm going to object to any hearsay.
I'll sustain that unless you got that from Ms. Griffin.
Yes, Your Honor. So last I had heard, she had been evicted, and I did talk to
Objection, same objection.
Yeah,
I-
don't tell me.
Let me
No, I
rephrase the
just said
question.
I had heard it from Miss Griffin. If I could.
Who told you that Miss Griffin was evicted?
Miss Griffin did when she was at her first rehab, Starlight.
And when was that?
That was in August going into September of 2023.
And since then, has Miss Griffin provided you with her safe and stable home for the child?
She has not. My understanding, as Mr. Hardy had pointed out during announcements, that she has been in 5 different facilities. My understanding was 6, but it's apparently 5. So my belief is that she's staying in different facilities right now to provide herself with housing.
Okay. And Miss Griffin also talked about being sexually assaulted. Has she provided you with a police report or any official information in terms of the steps that she took after being sexually assaulted?
No, and this is the first day I'm hearing that she was sexually assaulted. When I spoke to Mr. Hardy, he initially said that he believed she had been assaulted, but it was not sexually assaulted.
And I'm going to object to any statements from counsel. It's hearsay.
Well, you're not her counsel.
So that had been my understanding. As far as where she was living when she was not in rehab for the past 2 weeks, I don't know.
Have you asked Miss Griffin, have you had the opportunity to ask Miss Griffin if she filed a police report?
I did not. I asked the facility, Starlight, for records, any type of records that they could give me. And I know that that's kind of been an ongoing battle right now, is getting those records. And an information release was signed at Starlight for them to give me records. But once once a client leaves the facility, the information release is no longer valid. So I have no idea anything regarding an assault.
Okay. And there had been this ongoing back and forth about prescriptions, etc. Did Miss Griffin ever provide you with prescriptions for her meth or other drugs that she had been using?
She provided me, her or her attorney, I believe it was in a group message, provided me a picture of a medication bottle that for methamphetamine, and that was at the very first hearing at the end of March. And since then, I've received no verification of medications.
And do you recall at the initial day 1 of the trial, when the motion to continue had been filed, do you recall Miss Griffin admitting on the oath that in fact her drug of choice was meth?
Yes.
And do you have any reason to believe, based on any documentation that's been provided to you by Miss Griffin, that she is no longer using illegal substances?
I have no proof of that. And I, as stated, based on the past 3 years, there are extensive concerns, so it would be more than just one drug test or one stay at an inpatient facility. I think there's some extensive work that would need to show sobriety.
Okay. Thank you. Pass the witness.
Ms. Wilhelm, do you have any redirect?
I do not, Judge.
Any recross, Mr. Hardy?
Yes. You also received from me on May 19th evidence of a prescription for meth from the month of December. Is that correct?
Can you refresh my memory of what month of December the prescription would have been?
December of 2022. Filled out December 24th, 2022.
That would make sense. Yes, I do recall that because I asked a further question from you after that.
Okay, so there was more than one prescription that was filled out by Ms. Griffin for methamphetamine.
I think that's where the confusion is and where the disagreement was with the prescription for verification, because the prescription bottle was one verification, and from my understanding, she had only had one prescription for it. So receiving a second one during the month that would have been filled, December 2022, was also the month that the investigation began.
Okay.
So there was a lot of confusion regarding that.
And has Ms. Griffin told you whether she's continued to use this prescription?
That would require Ms. Griffin communicating with me on a considerably consistent basis, and no, she hasn't.
Okay, no further questions.
Ms. Smith, any recross?
Yes, Judge. I just want to flesh out, Ms. Noyes, we've talked about the prescription, and again, I want to re-clarify. On August 31st, do you recall Ms. Griffin under cross-examination admitting that, in fact, she used methamphetamines? That was her drug of choice. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Objection asked and answered.
Hang on just a second. On August 31st for this hearing, I only show that we heard testimony from Ms. Noyes.
Your Honor, we had a pre-hearing where there was a motion.
I believe it was the motion for continuance.
Yes, Judge.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yes, Judge. And okay, so you clarify then that you do recall her stating that her drug of choice was methamphetamines.
Yes.
And that the prescription was really just a ploy to, because she's a meth addict.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll recall the testimony, Ms. Smith.
Okay. And so even with these, I guess, prescriptions for methamphetamine, with a double down now of Ms. Griffin's use of meth through a prescription, does that give cause for the department to have concern?
Yes, it does. And it aligns with, based off my records, it aligns with the last case history as well.
Okay. Has Ms. Griffin shown any real sincere efforts to address her substance abuse, or is your concern that Ms. Griffin has tried to circumvent the process by trying to obtain methamphetamine prescriptions?
That's my understanding. That's the department's position and belief, is that the
objection calls for speculation.
Don't speculate.
No, I was just stating this case has started, as Mr. Hardy stated, it began in March, technically as a TMC portion of the case. But the investigation portion of the case began in December. And prior to that, there is an extensive history of CPS history regarding substance abuse. Between the records that I've obtained, my observations during this case, the lack of engagement, and at the very beginning of this case, up until we began trial, it was between me, CASA, Mr. Hardy, everybody was attempting to make efforts to work with Ms. Griffin to get her into a sobriety state. And it was hard for her, but it was hard for everybody to try to help her when she didn't want to accept the help. So the first thing that I've learned in my 5 years of doing this is that if a client doesn't want the help, you can't force them. And the lack of engagement for Miss Griffin in regards to accepting the help. It was a free inpatient program. All she had to do was take the OSAR evaluation that had been sent to her numerous times. It had been offered to her during the investigation portion. Her lack of willingness shows just a lack of wanting to be sober. So going and getting a prescription after the investigation had started for methamphetamine, there are some concerns that it was just to try to ignore the problem and cover it with a prescription. And based on the history of the last case, I would have a hard time understanding why a physician of any sort would give a
And
prescription.
I'm gonna object, Miss Noyes
And
is
so-
not a medical.
Hang on. Let me, what's your objection, Mr. Hardy?
When Miss Noyes was speaking about what any physician does or not does, she's not a medical expert.
What is your objection?
Strike the objection, yeah.
And I will just clarify, I said I think.
We need to have one word objection so we can keep this moving, and I know what you're objecting to, so I can.
I'll strike that objection, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Smith.
And so even if a board certified doctor had given Miss Griffin a prescription for methamphetamines, would the department have concerns with the child's safety if the child were to be sent back with a mother or exposed to a mother who continued to use a dangerous drug, methamphetamine, albeit through a prescription?
The department would have concerns, yes.
Would the department see that, even though prescribed by a physician, as just someone still using meth,
Yes.
and therefore inheriting all the dangers that come with that?
I don't
That's a
know.
yes or no.
Yes, the department
Okay.
would have concerns.
Thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Noyes. Ms. Wilhelm, who's your next witness?
Judge, I will call the CASA volunteer. Okay. And how often do you go and visit or have correspondence or interaction with Aries at this point?
At least monthly, most months more often than that. Normally I'm in the home at least twice a month.
And who's currently in the home with Aries?
That would be Miss Christy LaCroix, the grandmother. She's the placement, and then Andrew LaCroix, the father.
And when you go visit Aries in the home, what do you notice about Aries' interaction with the placement and, well, just those in the home?
Aries is almost 4 now. Typical toddler, very active, very happy. He's a very smart little boy. He's very attached to both the grandmother, whom he calls Cece, and his dad. There's a strong bond there on both parts. Mr. LaCroix, as he's recovered from having his prosthetic and learning to walk again, that kind of thing, he and Aries have really spent a good deal of time together, and he's starting to take over more of the day-to-day care of Aries now that he's able to. So very bonded, very comfortable in the home, very secure, just a sweetheart of a little boy.
Do you have any concerns about the placement in that home? Do you have any?
Would you ask the question again? I didn't get her answer.
Okay. Do you have any concerns with the placement or him living in that home?
I do not. As long as Mr. LaCroix stays on the sober path, I don't have any concerns.
Okay. And at this point, is CASA in support of the plan of reunification with Mr. LaCroix?
We would like to give it more time. Mr. LaCroix has only been sober for less than a year. So at this point, it would be very difficult for me to say yes to that question. I would like to see a longer sobriety.
And let me just clarify. I'm not asking about today. I'm saying that's the case plan goal. Is CASA in agreement with that being the case plan goal before we get out of this case at some point?
Yes.
Okay. And what is CASA's recommendation with regards to Ms. Griffin?
As stated by the department, it's been very difficult to have interactions with Ms. Griffin. She's been very uncommunicative. I was able to visit with her one time in her home late summer, and go over the services that she needed to complete. She did none of them. She has not stayed in contact. Periodically, I will get a text from her, but they're very infrequent. I did have a phone conversation with her at the end of October, where she told me about the assault at the facility where she was staying. I did ask if she had filed a police report. She said she did not. I have seen no actions from Ms. Griffin that tell me that Aries is the priority in her life.
And so what would the department, or what would CASA's recommendation be with regards to termination of her parental rights? Would you be in support of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you feel that that would be in the best interest of Aries at this point?
I do.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes. You said that you saw Miss Griffin in her home.
I did back in the summer.
Okay. Do you remember what month that was?
I believe it was July. I could go back to my notes, but I believe it was July.
Okay. What was the condition of the home?
It was clean. I was only in the living area, but the home was clean. And she was there alone. That's basically all I can tell you about it.
Okay. So based on what you were able to see of the home, was the home an appropriate place for Aries?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to relevance at this point, because she's been evicted from the home. So whether that home is appropriate or not, she's evicted from the home.
I'm not sure if this is the home she was evicted from.
Just let me rule, okay? I'm overruling the objection. Ms. Smith, please continue, Mr. Hardy.
So based on what you were able to see, was the home that Miss Griffin was keeping, was that an appropriate environment?
At that point in time, I would say that the home was. However, that is the home that she was evicted from. She told me that herself.
Okay.
And since July, I have no idea where she's been living.
And is that when and when did you speak to her about whether she filed a police report for the assault?
It was I believe it was in October.
Okay,
I
so
have to go back to my notes and look, but I believe it was October.
Okay, so about a month after it happened. Within a month or so.
It seems like it was less than a month, a couple of weeks. It was the first contact I had with her after she checked herself out of that rehab. So I believe it was a couple of weeks after.
Okay. Have you seen any interactions between Miss Griffin and Aries?
No, she's not had visitation since I took over this case.
And even if Miss Griffin did not have any visitation, would it be helpful for Mr. LaCroix if he received child support from Miss Griffin?
I can't answer that question. I don't know the answer.
Okay. Would it at least be helpful if Mr. LaCroix received child support from Miss Griffin?
I would assume that would be helpful, but that's totally an assumption on my part.
Okay, no further questions.
Ms. Smith?
Ms. Hawkins, has Ms. Griffin informed you of any current residences since she told you she had been evicted?
She has not. The last text I got from her over the weekend on Saturday was that she was checking herself into rehab, and that was on Saturday.
Okay. And so is it your understanding then that she has not had a place of her own other than these facilities since she was evicted from that home?
Objection calls for speculation.
Speculate.
Do you know whether or not she's had any residences of her own since the last resident where you visited her?
I've asked multiple times. I've gotten no response to that. So as far as I know, she has not.
Okay, actually, that's all I have, Your Honor. I pass the witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Any redirect, Ms. Wilhelm?
I do not, Judge.
Any recross, Mr. Hardy?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Wilhelm, you have another witness?
I do not, Judge.
Mr. Hardy, do you have any witnesses?
Can we take a short break where I can confer with my client?
Yes, let me create a breakout room for you. Give me just a moment.
Amanda, what grounds are you seeking again?
B, E, I think, N.
Is N abandonment?
Or maybe P. The failure to complete the court-ordered rehab, or,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So DEN.
Okay, sorry, P. You're right. N is constructive abandonment.
Right,
P
because I
is
thought
the one
that,
I'm
okay.
thinking of. Yeah,
So
P is the
D,
one
E,
I'm
and P,
thinking of.
okay.
Although I could ask for N as well.
I mean, the court stopped her visits.
True. I'm not
But
saying
the
it's a
court-
strong argument. I'm just saying it's an argument.
They stopped them if she didn't engage in services and take a drug test, then they could have been reinstated, and she didn't.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess
I
that.
don't know.
Excuse me. I just realized we're still live on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just looked up and noticed that. Y'all might need to know that.
Okay, so I just learned something new today. That German chocolate cake, which I love, and I actually thought it was from Germany, is not from Germany. It was actually named after the baker, Sam Baker, who created it in 1852 in Texas, from Texas. And it used to be German's chocolate cake after Sam German. But over the years, the S kind of got lost along the way, and it became German chocolate cake. So I learned something new today.
Did someone say chocolate?
Yes. And the best part about it is that he was from Texas.
And Mr. Hardy conferred with his client. Ms. Harding has joined us. Ms. Harding, do you want to announce?
Sorry, Your Honor. Tracy Harding for Andrew LaCroix, and I am just going to be listening and trying to pull off if necessary. I'm trying to get back to my office.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Harding. So far, the department has rested, and Mr. Hardy has communicated with his client. Now, Mr. Hardy, do you have any witnesses you wish to call?
Yes, I will call my client, Stephanie
You may
Griffin.
proceed.
Yes, Ms. Griffin, a lot has been made of your prescription for methamphetamine. Were you using prescription methamphetamine?
Yes, I was using prescription methamphetamine.
Why were you using prescription methamphetamine?
It's to treat ADHD.
Were you on any other medications for ADHD previously?
Yes, I was on Adderall until they had an Adderall shortage.
Okay. And about when was the Adderall shortage?
Probably say like November of 2022.
Okay. And so you got your first prescription for methamphetamine when?
In December.
And was it prescribed by a medical doctor?
Yes.
So you got it legally?
Yes.
When did you, or about how often did you use this prescription?
It was to take 2 daily.
Okay. How often was that the instruction for how often you were supposed to take it?
And sometimes I wouldn't take them, but yes, it was 2 daily. Sometimes I would just take 1.
Okay. And so when did you get your first prescription?
December.
Okay, and then when did you get your next prescription?
In May, I believe,
Or, okay,
March.
so that prescription bottle in December lasted some
Yeah,
time?
I wasn't using them all yet.
Okay. When did you stop or are you still using this prescription?
No, as soon as y'all told me to stop taking it, I never got picked up the prescription again.
Okay. So when was the last time you used that prescription?
I finished the bottle that I had. Probably like in March, maybe May.
Okay. So it was after this case had been going.
Yeah, I just finished my bottle and then I never got another one.
Okay. The domestic violence allegations, was that between you and Mr. LaCroix?
No, it was not.
Was it in a relationship before Mr. LaCroix?
Yes,
Okay.
and I had taken classes for that previously.
You have
Okay.
what? I'm sorry.
I've had taken classes for domestic violence in the previous case.
Thank you.
Is domestic, do you believe domestic violence is a problem for you now?
No.
You were ordered to inpatient rehab around May 19th, is that correct?
Yes.
What steps after you were ordered to inpatient did you take to get into inpatient?
I called up there or went up there and tried to check myself in at the Hill Country Wimberley. And when I got there, they said that I wasn't allowed there. And so I wasn't able to get in.
Okay. And so were you trying to get
Objection
into...
to leading.
Don't lead your witness, Mr. Hardy.
Around the time we had the show cause hearing on June 2nd, where were you?
I was trying to check into rehab.
Where were you trying to check in?
Hill Country Wimberley.
Okay. And they said you weren't allowed into?
Yeah, my insurance, and then yeah, because I had previously tried to put myself in there once and left too.
Okay. And so then you were arrested in July, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall the date when you got out of Hayes County Jail?
It was September 24th.
Was it August or September?
Or I think it was August.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
okay. And so what did you do when you got out of jail?
My mom flew in from Florida and took me straight to Starlight Rehab.
Okay. What was the time gap between getting out of jail and going to Starlight?
Not even a full day, not full 24 hours.
And I would like to remind anybody who is in the background not to answer any questions for Ms. Griffin.
Thank you.
And
hang on just a second. I'm not sure that the person in the background was answering for Ms. Griffin because I didn't hear exactly what they said. But Ms. Griffin, if you've got someone else in the room, they need to either be quiet or leave the room.
I'm in a room by myself.
Okay. I thought I heard somebody.
I can shut the door all the way.
Shut the door all the way. That would be a good idea. That way when people walk by, we're not hearing what they're saying. Go ahead.
So about how long were you in Starlight Recovery?
Probably 22 days.
Okay. Why did you leave Starlight Recovery?
Because I was sexually assaulted. And when I asked them for help, they were ignoring me and never helped me. So then it started to weigh heavy on me, and I just had to leave.
Did you feel safe at Starlight Recovery?
No.
So this was mentioned earlier. After you were out of Starlight Recovery, did you go to Austin Oaks?
Yeah.
And you stated previously that was for mental health?
Yeah.
Why did you feel that you needed mental health treatment?
Because of the sexual assault and losing my dad.
When did you lose your dad?
August 13th.
And you were in, this was mentioned previously, you were in the Haven in Dallas?
Yes.
How long were you there?
Probably 10 days, 12 days.
Okay. And Starlight, that was the facility you were in at the time of the last hearing, August 31st?
Yes, sir.
What steps did you take to get into rehab after you were out of the Haven in Dallas?
I called around and see who had a bed available, and I had to wait until a facility called the Right Step in Houston had a bed available and was able to Greyhound me down there and then pick me up from the station and get to the rehab.
Okay, and about when was that?
October 17th.
Okay, so how long were you at the Right Step facility in Houston?
Probably 18, 19 days, and then my insurance cut off.
Okay, and so your insurance cut off, and what options were available to you at that time?
To stay there and go into a sober living house called Magnificod, but I really didn't want to do that because I didn't want to live in Houston, so I denied that option.
So this would have been a sober living house and not a rehab?
Yeah.
Not inpatient?
Yeah, it would be sober living.
And okay, so are you saying that your option that the Houston facility had for you was not inpatient rehab at that point?
Yeah.
When did you leave Right Step Houston?
I really don't know. Probably like on.
How long, let me rephrase that. How long were you in Right Step Houston?
20 days, 18 days.
18 days from October 17th.
Okay.
So you were out of right. Okay, so you were out of Right Step Houston.
Hang on. Tammy didn't get her response. What was your response, Ms. Griffin?
Probably like the 6th.
Go ahead, Mr. Hardy.
So around the beginning of the month, early November, you were out of Right Step Houston?
Yes.
And so where are you now?
At Singapore in Austin.
When did you enter Singapore?
On probably the 25th.
Okay. And how long are you going to be in Singapore?
Till about Christmas.
Okay. And what are you going to do after you are out of Singapore?
My landlord has given me the option to move back there as long as I pay him and then work, or I'm going to a sober living situation that also allows kids to be there.
Okay.
I'm looking at both options.
Are you going to use methamphetamine?
No.
What do you want for Aries?
To be able to have both me and his father in his life, and to have me as his mother, and to be loved by me, and to reunite with me, and to have a healthy, happy, fun life.
And do you believe that you would be able to provide that for Aries?
Of course.
And if Aries is placed primarily with Mr. LaCroix, do you think Mr. LaCroix should receive child support from you?
Yes.
And do you think Mr. LaCroix could use child support?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, Judge. Good morning, Ms. Griffin. Ms. Griffin, do you consider yourself a meth addict?
I'm sober. I'm not a meth addict.
So that's a yes or no. You do not
No.
consider yourself, or do you consider yourself a
I do
meth
not.
addict?
I do not.
Do you recall testifying in August that your drug of choice was meth?
Yes, that I was using my methamphetamine prescription.
Do you recall testifying in August that your drug of choice was meth? That's a yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And this was from questioning by me. And you recall, I never asked you about a prescription. So I just want to clarify that. And do you recall testifying on the oath that that was the reason why you obtained a meth prescription?
Yeah, I prefer methamphetamine to my.
So is that a yes, or is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time, you recall that you never said anything about treating ADHD.
It was for ADHD.
But in August, that you never testified that you were taking meth. Let me finish. For treating ADHD.
I did not know. I didn't say that.
Who is your treating physician for your ADHD?
Her name is Joy Asite.
And where is she? What kind of doctor is she?
Is a psychiatric doctor through Karma Health.
Tell me her name again. I didn't hear it.
Joy Asite.
Joy A is the middle initial.
Yeah, Joy Joy Site Sike.
And where is she located?
I'm not sure. We were doing virtual visits.
Well, is she in the state of Texas?
I believe so.
And how often do you see her?
Once a month.
And so who is Dr. Frank Nwankwo?
Probably the doctor that approves the prescription.
And why is he filling your prescription if your physician is Dr. Psych?
Objection calls for speculation.
Hang on, if you know.
I don't know.
Have you ever met Dr. Nwankwo?
No, I have not.
Has he ever treated you?
No.
Okay. And why is a tribal doctor in Oklahoma writing prescriptions for you?
Like I said, it was through a app where they prescribed ADHD meds as long as you've had previous history with ADHD medication because of COVID.
So you want the judge to believe that you bypassed all the licensed physicians in Texas and you sought out, let me finish, and you sought out a tribal doctor in Oklahoma to write you meth prescriptions?
No.
And I'm going to object to facts, not in evidence. It's not even been established where this doctor's from.
Overruled. Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Answer
Please
the
continue.
question. Yes, please answer the question.
So like I said, because of COVID, they were doing everything online. And so I logged into a place called Karma Health where they prescribed ADHD meds through this online.
What was it called?
Hang on.
Yeah, what was it called? What health?
Karma Health. And
Carmel?
yeah, and then you would pick a physician, which I picked Joy Asike, and then she had all my history of my Adderall prescriptions. And then she told me there's an Adderall shortage that I needed to change medications. And then she said, have you ever tried Desoxyn? And I said, no. And then Desoxyn's the name brand of methamphetamine.
And so why are you in rehab then?
Because I was ordered to go to rehab.
Because you were ordered to go to rehab?
Yes.
So are you telling the court then that, but for the fact that you were ordered to go to rehab, you don't need rehab?
I mean,
that's a yes or no.
If y'all say that my prescription's dangerous, then I will get off the medication and stay off of it.
Ma'am, please answer the question that I asked you. But for the fact that the judge ordered you into rehab, do you feel that you need rehab?
Yes.
Why do you need rehab?
To get off all my prescriptions I've been on and just live without any prescriptions.
So you want to live without your prescriptions for your so-called ADHD?
Yes.
And what's the plan for your ADHD?
There's like other ways to do it, like meditation and yoga and other like organic ways to do it.
Were you using meth before you obtained the prescription for methamphetamines?
I was, yes.
Okay, so you had been a meth addict long before these doctors, wherever they exist, had started prescribing you meth, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But then I was able to get off of the legal meth through my prescription.
Do you recall telling Miss Noyes that you had been kicked out of rehab for sneaking in chocolates and they wouldn't take you back because of your history there? Because of your history?
Yeah, that's why whenever I went there, they denied me.
But that's not what you said today.
Yes, I said because of my previous problems with them.
Do you understand that your credibility is really important to this court, that she has to believe what's coming out of your mouth?
I'm telling you everything that I know.
Okay, so you understand that your credibility goes into question when you tell your caseworker one thing, but you testify to something else.
I mean, I said it in a different way.
But you didn't mention anything about chocolates today.
Oh, I mean, I just said it because of my previous problems there. I didn't know I had to say that because of the chocolate.
And you were ordered to pay child support. How much child support have you paid since you were ordered to pay child support?
I haven't paid anything because I've been just going in and out of rehabs and in jail.
Why were you in jail?
For the contempt of court.
I'm sorry?
Contempt of court.
And at this point, do you feel that you have any issues with methamphetamine?
I do not.
And if you were ordered for a hair follicle or a nail scrape, what would the results be?
I thought I'd be clean.
Okay. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Wilhelm, do you have any questions for Ms. Griffin?
Yes, Judge. Ms. Griffin, you had a previous CPS case, correct?
Yes.
And was methamphetamine use part of the reason for that CPS case?
There is I admitted that I had used once when I was early pregnant, but I told them I had quit. I never ever failed the drug test. They checked the baby, he was clean, and I'm passed every hair follicle. I did not have a problem with meth in that whole entire case.
But you have a history of meth usage, correct?
Yeah, yes, but it was before that. And
okay. Did you, when you were talking to the doctor who gave you the prescription for your ADHD medication, did you let that doctor know that you have a history of methamphetamine use?
Well, she was using the word desoxin.
Yes or no?
No.
Thank you. Do you not think that it would be relevant to tell a medical provider that you have a history of methamphetamine use when the primary medication for your issue is amphetamines?
Oh, well, I didn't really know it was methamphetamines because she was using the word desoxin. And until I went to the doctor and got the off-brand, it was methamphetamine.
And at that point, did you not feel that it would be an important factor to tell the medical provider, hey, I have a history of this?
Well, I wasn't abusing it and it was working. So
is that a yes or no? Did you feel that it was important to tell the medical provider at that point?
No.
Now, have you provided a hair strand or a drug test at all during the pendency of this case?
I gave them the urine. I just didn't do the hair follicle.
Okay. Are you aware that the court ordered you several times to submit a hair follicle test?
Yes, there were several times I've tried to make it, but I had issues getting there, or it was too late, and then something always would come up.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're aware that it was ordered, but you did not provide it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But I tried.
And with regards to child support, how long has it been since Aries lived with you?
He stopped staying with me in March. But he wasn't really seeing me that much though. it was only like once a week or so.
So he wasn't living with you full time?
No.
When was the last time he lived with you full time?
Probably when he was first born, this first year.
Okay. So in the last 12 months, how much child support have you provided for Aries?
I have not.
How much have you provided diapers?
Oh, I mean, well, yeah, like when he was with me, I had provided everything, and I would also drop off stuff to Christy, like shampoo, conditioner, diapers, wipes. I would buy him clothes and send them with it.
And when is the last time you provided anything to support your child?
On March.
Okay. When's the last time you visited with Aries?
In March.
Do you recall back in, I believe it was at the May hearing, when the judge ordered you to stop taking or stop using methamphetamines as a prescription?
Yes.
Do you recall telling the judge that she couldn't order you to stop taking your prescription medication?
Oh, I don't recall that.
Okay. Ask the witness, Judge.
Mr. Hardy, do you have any redirect?
Just to clarify, with the facility that would not let you in because you'd allegedly snuck in chocolates, was that the facility you were trying to get into in Wimberley?
Yes.
Okay. And so in your direct testimony, you only said you weren't allowed to get into that facility.
Well, yeah.
When you tried to, but you weren't, but did anything about your testimony in your direct contradict what Ms. Smith brought up?
I don't believe so.
Are you aware that regarding child support, that your support was suspended while you were in rehab?
No, I did not know that.
Okay, no further questions.
Ms. Smith, any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Wilhelm, any recross?
No, Judge.
Mr. Hardy, do you have any more witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Smith, do you have any witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Harding, I know this doesn't apply to your client, but do you have any witnesses you wish to call?
Sorry, Your Honor, I do not.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy, Ms. Wilhelm, and Ms. Smith, would you all like to make an argument before I make my ruling or a closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Hardy, go ahead.
So, Your Honor, the department only called 2 witnesses. They called the caseworker during the case, and they called CASA. We didn't hear any testimony about from the department about the reasons for the removal, conditions of the home. It seems like the testimony from Ms. Griffin was that she was using a prescription methamphetamine medication that she's no longer on. We don't have any testimony that she endangered Aries or directly harmed Aries or placed Aries in danger. Aries was living primarily with his father during that time. There was some testimony on August 31st about Ms. Griffin's engagement with the service plan, but as you know, Your Honor, the ground O requires 9 months of temporary managing conservatorship from the department. It's been established that the removal was March 6th, and so we are short of the 9 months that would be required for a ground O finding. Regarding what may be ground P, Ms. Griffin gave the court her testimony about her many attempts to complete rehab. She's gone to multiple facilities. As the court may recall, she was at a facility, and at the hearing on August 31st, she had to leave because she felt unsafe. She needed mental health treatment after, as a result of being sexually assaulted at that facility. She went back to another facility in Houston. She ran into insurance problems, as she testified. And the next option that was available to her would have been sober living. It would not have even been in compliance with the court order for inpatient rehab. And then, as she testified, she's in a rehab facility now. So she is engaged in her court-ordered rehab. Finally, I'd like to point out that while she hasn't had visitation or contact with Aries throughout this case, that's mainly because the court had ordered all visitation suspended. So there was nothing she could have done to visit Aries during this time. And then child support, while she hasn't paid child support, that was ordered to have been suspended while she was in rehab, and she's been in rehab on and off for much of this case. And then regarding best interest of the child, Ms. Griffin testified as to her plans for sobriety after she is out of Senecor. She can either go back to the home she lived in before, or she can go to a sober living house. She plans to remain sober in the future. She won't be returning to methamphetamine prescription or not. And then finally, regardless of what visitation she gets, it would be in Aries's best interest if Ms. Griffin retains parental rights, if only to pay child support. Mr. LaCroix is an amputee. He's struggling, and so Aries could benefit from child support from Ms. Griffin. So I'd ask the court not to terminate Ms. Griffin's rights, and ideally, I think the best course of action would be for the court to allow Ms. Griffin to continue this case on the same timeline as Mr. LaCroix. There was testimony about the department not referring her to any more drug tests after the trial had begun. Perhaps it would be useful for the court to know what her status is. And then we've already got a case going. Terminating Ms. Griffin's rights will not speed up permanency for Aries because Mr. LaCroix is still in his case. CASA testified that we're not quite ready to conclude his case on that. So I'd ask ideally for the court to allow Ms. Griffin to continue this case, complete rehab, take a hair follicle test, and continue this until final orders.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Ms. Smith, do you have a closing statement you wish to make?
Just briefly, Judge. Your Honor, I am aligned with the department as well as with CASA with respect to terminating Ms. Griffin's parental rights. As the court heard, the child is doing really well. He is very bonded with his father, with his grandmother. He has not seen his mother in some time, and he is where he ought to be. As the court may remember, when this case first started, it was really difficult getting Ms. Griffin to submit to a hair follicle, which till this day she has not done so. Instead, she went out and she provided prescriptions for methamphetamine. The court may also recall that Ms. Griffin has testified under oath in the past that her drug of choice was methamphetamine, and she also testified on the oath that she, to circumvent her illegal use of meth, she then acquired prescription methamphetamine, so she can continue to take methamphetamine without having to do anything. She also informed the court that the court had no jurisdiction over her with respect to ordering her to stop using her prescription methamphetamine. She has not paid child support since March. She has not seen her child since March. And Your Honor, I'm also asking the court to take judicial notice of the court's files, specifically as to the court's orders. The court had ordered that her visitation be suspended until she submitted to a hair follicle. So had she submitted to a hair follicle, it didn't matter what that hair follicle results had yielded. She would have been able to resume her visitation. But she doubled down. She was very defiant, and she chose not to submit to those hair follicles. And so for that reason, her absence from her child continued to be in effect. And so I would venture, Your Honor, that was that was a willful conduct on her part, as to not being able to have visitation with her child, and thereby, constructively abandoning the child. Ms. Griffin today has not shown any indication that she wants to be a fit parent, through her continued drug use, whether it was meth or otherwise. She has not meaningfully engaged in rehab that would help her to kick her long-standing drug use. I would also, ask the court to, take into consideration that if a parent is before the court and instead of trying to address their substance abuse, they would go as far as to get a prescription to continue to use that drug, that is significant, and that should be of significant concern to the court as well as to the department. I feel that for all those reasons, this mother's rights should be terminated, Your Honor, and she should take nothing today.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Ms. Wilhelm?
And Judge, thanks to Ms. Smith, I'll make it really brief because I think she covered pretty much everything. But Judge, we would also ask for termination of Ms. Griffin's parental rights. In absolute candor to the court, our petition, I believe, states grounds D, E, K, O, and P. However, we are requesting, and I believe there was evidence presented with regards to D, E, F, I, N, and P. F, Judge, is the failure to support in accordance with her ability. She stated herself that she has not paid child support in the last 12 months, that while she has provided some diapers, etc., that stopped in May. And even before that, it was when the child was with her, which was not full time. I grounds is a refusal to submit to a reasonable and lawful order of the court, which she also testified, Judge, that while she knew that there was multiple court orders for her hair follicle test, she never did submit a hair follicle test. I would also point out that she, even though the department or the court ordered her to go to an inpatient treatment facility, she did not do so until a few days before each of her trial settings, effectively. The end grounds, as Ms. Smith pointed out, is the constructive abandonment. She had the ability to have her visitation reinstated. It was fully in her control, and she did not take the steps that were necessary to do that. With regards to P, which is the failure to complete inpatient after being court ordered, I think that speaks for itself, and the history that was laid out as far as her inpatient and rehab in and out and short stints. Judge Aries is doing very well in his current placement right now. He is with his grandmother and his father. His father is making tremendous strides. He has stayed clean. The long-term plan is reunification with Aries' father. He has a support system. He is doing very well, Judge. And I don't believe Mom has shown any stability to be a part of that. And we would ask that you find that it's in best interest of Aries for her rights to be terminated.
Yeah. Your Honor, if I could have just a very brief response, I would object to any grounds that were not pled by the department. In addition, ground I is the refusal to submit to a lawful order of the court under subchapter D, chapter 261, which is referring to investigation. So that would not apply to the testimony in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. Thank you. So one of the first things Ms. Noyes spoke of when she first took the stand back on August 31st, she referred to the condition of the home and the drug paraphernalia, the CPS case, I'm sorry, the FBSS case, and the lack of engagement. So Mr. Hardy, in your closing, you mentioned that there was no testimony about that, but I have copious notes on it. Ms. Griffin, Mr. LaCroix and you started off on pretty much level playing field. You started in the same position. As a matter of fact, you may have had a little better start at this than he did because he had to rehabilitate medically because of the loss of his leg and the fentanyl overdose and all. But this is a prime example of how a person can overcome the drug addiction, can overcome the obstacles that they placed in their own way when they became addicted to drugs and caused such a terrible situation in Mr. LaCroix's life. He brought that on himself. But I believe he has stepped up to the plate and has recognized what he's done and has taken the appropriate steps and the ordered steps in order to accomplish his recovery, to be where he is today. So I don't want you to walk away from here and feel like you didn't get a fair shake and that he got a better shake. You had every opportunity that he had. And this is your, I count, third case. Your first case was a prior CPS case. And I think the child's name was Aiden, if I recall correctly. And the second case was the FBSS case that started prior to this one that would have allowed you to not have your parental rights at risk. But I find that you haven't done anything, Ms. Griffin, to help yourself be in a position to recover your rights to your child and placement for your child. And for that reason, I am going to terminate your parental rights under 161.001B1 D, E, N, and P, and 2. I find that that's in Aries' best interest that your parental rights be terminated. The department will continue temporary managing conservatorship of the child. The father's hearing needs to will continue. He'll have a second permanency on December the 15th at 9. I believe that's going to be in person. And his trial is set for February 2nd at 9. Mr. LaCroix, the law still requires that I give you a warning at the end of every hearing, and that warning is that if you cannot or will not provide a safe and stable home for your child, your parental rights may be restricted or terminated. Mr. Hardy, you're aware of your time requirements for filing an appeal or a de novo. With the exception of filing those matters, I'm going to discharge you from your duties to represent Ms. Griffin.
And
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I don't see that the department pled ground in. Is the court still terminating her on that ground?
I am.
Okay.
Ms. Griffin, I don't have the petition right in front of me. If it's not in your pleadings, Ms. Wilhelm, I can't make that finding, but D, E, and P for sure, but I don't have a copy of the petition right in front of me.
Discharge.
Okay, so make sure my order complies. Those are the ones that I'm finding. I'm not finding I, I'm not finding O, and I'm not finding F. But I do find that there is clear and convincing evidence under D, E, N, and P. If you only have D, E, and P in your petition, please put that in the order.
That's fine. Yes, Judge.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all. You're free to go. Karen's going to hang on. We have some stuff to discuss. I'm going to stop the live stream.